Welcome to Keep What You Earn, your judgment and jargon-free zone for entrepreneurs of all levels. Get ready to learn how to scale your business, save money in taxes, and create a business that grows your wealth. If it feels like the financial side of business is like eating your vegetables, well, then think of this podcast as the ranch dressing to make the process a little more enjoyable. My name is Shannon Weinstein. I'm a CPA and business owner on a mission to simplify money and empower others through knowledge. I hope this episode inspires you to take action, but remember that the information we share is for educational purposes only and is not individual tax advice. Now that we got that out of the way, let's start the show. So I think as humans, and probably especially as business owners, we're super impatient overall. We want everything now. We want instant gratification by nature. I think we're also trained that the harder we work, the sooner we expect results. Like if you're going to work really hard at the gym, you want to see results like next week. And sometimes it doesn't work that way and it becomes disappointing. And one of the ways that shows up for me and for my clients is playing the long game in marketing. Now, people will advise, right, playing the long game, or they might give you hacks and tips on how to get the short game to work in your favor. And what I want to talk about in today's episode is how to play the long game in marketing, but not kill your cash flow in the process. Because a lot of times we can't afford to not have instant gratification. We can't afford that long term delay. And when you're playing the long game in marketing, I do believe that is the most high ROI effort is when you're intentionally playing long game, because typically those are the most long, sustainable types of results. That if you're going to be doing long game strategy, then you're probably adopting really good habits. You're probably going to be seeing those results consistently for time to come. However, you may have to wait a significant period of time before you start seeing those results. And in the process, investing a lot of money in ads, investing a lot of money in people, investing a lot of money in a new website, branding, whatever that looks like for you. And a lot of folks will say, hey, I don't know if I can afford to make those investments knowing that they're not really going to pay off in a direct way for me in the short term. So, what I want to do is really cover how to manage those priorities effectively, what I've seen clients do, what I've done, and hopefully you'll extract something from this that you can then apply to your own business. So, when we're playing the long game, part of it is controlling spending to some extent. So, what you want to do is have, in a way, a little bit invested. And this is totally up to your tolerance level, your budget, your cash flow. Everything's unique. But you want to have an intentional amount of money set aside for maybe some short term ads testing. So, if you're doing Facebook ads or Meta ads, you're doing some type of short term push, you may want to have some money set aside to test the waters and to do some of that short term stuff, but I would always have something on the long-term spend for marketing. But here's the thing, you have to regulate it. So I've talked about this on episodes prior where we aim to have marketing or acquisition costs be a certain percentage of revenue just so that it's consistent. So if we're making more money, we can afford to spend more money on acquisition. So keep those costs to be a percentage of revenue as your target. So let's say your target's 20%. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm indifferent. I just have to pick a number. Okay. For the sake of math. So if my number is 20% and I make $1 million, then I have a 200K acquisition cost budget. Okay. So when you think about that, you say, okay, then believe it or not, it's pretty dang easy to spend that much money. But you look at, okay, how much of that can I put into Facebook ads, which are a little bit more, we'll say quick return, depending on what you sell, right? Or what the ads are for. So you're trying to like immediately convert, right? Immediate conversion type of activity. And then you're going to invest some in, say, networking groups or some in events or some in, you know, other investments, other types of programs, communities. Maybe it is in ads, but for a long term offer, like for your freebie, right? A landing page to your freebie where maybe you're not converting instantly, but you're collecting audience through email. So you might be running ads to your podcast, running ads to your freebie, and that's okay. You're just not going to get immediate conversion of a transaction from the ad. That is okay. But what you want to do is have a certain amount of money that you're spending on the long term and certain amount of money that's going to be a high return, um, revolution back to you. For the money that you are spending on the long term, You have to make sure that you're regulating the amount of spend on a monthly basis and perhaps weekly, depending on what your spend is, but monthly at least. And you should be looking at, yes, I can spend that like 200K a year, but I really should be aiming to spend X dollars a month and no more. So when you have these new initiatives that come up, because your brain, you will come up with ideas on new things you can do. And a lot of us use long term marketing strategy as, I want to say the scapegoat, but more of like the excuse to spend more money. So if I want to join this networking group, this seems really cool. There's cool people in it. And I argue that I want to sit at the cafeteria table with these people and I want to mingle with them. And I say, okay, I'm going to invest in this. I'm going to go and take a chance. But, you know, I may not see an ROI directly financially from this for a whole year. That is okay, by the way. But you have to be okay with saying, okay, am I ready for that? Can I just invest that money without any return? And if I don't get a return, will I think this is a waste of time and money? And you have to be really intentional about where you're spending your time and money on these long-term activities, these long game activities, because they're very uncertain. There's a lot that can change about your business and other people's businesses in between. So, what you have to keep in mind is when you're playing the long game of building relationships with your potential customers or potential partners or colleagues, you have to keep in mind that there will be evolutions as well. So, you have to make sure you're messaging properly and people know where to find you. And that also you're retaining attention, retaining eyeballs, retaining audience during that time as well, and that you're not dropping the ball. Because you could be doing long-term strategy. So you could be doing something like networking, right? You could be doing something like joining a community. But if you're never catching up, following up, and if you just heard this episode we did with Cass Thompson, that's what comes to mind, right? If you're not following through, then what are you really getting out of it? And are you going to let that effect last? Because we use the excuse all the time that we're playing the long game in marketing. Well, I'll tell you what, when you play the long game in marketing, you have to keep showing up to the game. Because when you play the long game, you also have to be consistent. You can't simply join a community, participate in it for 3 months, and then like wait for your check to cash in a couple of years. That's not how it works. Yes, you could get lucky and a relationship could resurface, but that's not the expectation. So, when we talk about playing the long game, I want to remind you that it involves consistency, it involves continuing to spend money, time, energy on those things. But also, you have to manage your cash flow. You have to be looking at your monthly cash. You have to be looking at your P&L. You have to be setting a target of what's healthy. And you have to be conscious of the fact that when you spend over that, you have to then pull from another place. As I always say, when you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to another. So if you're adding more marketing spend to your budget, you're saying no to either another expense or no to your profit. And neither is the wrong answer, but you have to acknowledge that you are doing that. Like there is no, net gain when you're choosing to spend something, at least in the short term, you're making a decision to say no to something else. By choosing where to put your money, you're also choosing where not to put it. So even if you have an ROI on your investment over time, in that very moment, you are pulling resources away from a potential other source, other thing, other initiative to go put money towards this. So we have to be really conscious of what is the strategy, what does good look like, what does success look like? And that's the last thing I wanted to remind you is when you play the long game in marketing, you have to have a really clear idea of what success looks like. So if you're saying, I'm going to join networking groups, I'm going to start a speaking tour, I'm going to start a podcast, which is, by the way, long term strategy. There are folks who listen to this show. Thank you for listening, who have reached out to me in recent weeks who say they've been a listener since 2021. Amazing. And for those of you who continue to show up, let me know who the hell you are, please, because I want to say thank you. I want to say hi. DM me, let me know. But is this a marketing strategy? Sure. I would love for listeners to reach out to me and want to work with me. Totally. I'm here to educate. I'm here to inform. I'm here to somewhat entertain, I guess. But the most important thing is to establish these relationships with you who are listening to me and to know that you're aware of what I do, and if you need me, you'll call me. That's it. And when you're playing the long game, you really got to know what success looks like. You got to say, okay, how do we know it's worth it? How do we know we should keep going? How do we know it's not working? You need to have something to measure against because you're going to end up wasting so much time, so much money, so much energy if you don't define the parameters of what good looks like and by when to expect it. And that requires some education and some, expertise. But if I said, hey, I'm going to start a podcast, and if in 2 years I don't feel a sense of listenership or community or value being shared or whatever, or it's not reaching the right audience, then maybe I should redirect it, start a new one, or just end it for now and try something different. And there's no wrong answer. You're not giving up. You're simply just using the data in front of you to make a better decision. So when we talk about playing the long game, just wrapping this up, just keep in mind that if you're using the excuse of, well, this is a long game play, just keep in mind, you got to know what success looks like. You got to be willing to sacrifice in the meantime. You got to be super aware of what this does to your cash flow. And you've got to set boundaries on what you're willing to spend on it on a monthly basis so that you're not overspending and over investing in certain areas, over indexing yourself and putting all your eggs in one basket, knowing that that basket of eggs may not hatch for some long time. Okay. So you got to be ready for what you're committing to. Okay, so if you've been listening to the show for a while, you know I love talking about profit and cash flow. But if you've mastered these things, the next level thing to be focused on is your customer value. If you have to constantly hustle to sell more and hit your revenue goals, it's important to think about how you can deliver more value, build retention, and maximize the lifetime profitability of every customer. When you invest in a power session, we're able to dive into your customer acquisition cost and determine some personalized strategies to decrease your costs and increase the lifetime value of your customers. Click the link in the show notes to learn more.